Okay, well, let's get started here. Good morning, and thanks for everybody who made it out. This obviously is one of the most, if not the most important issue that we're facing here in Hastings. And as I said, my first campaign promise to Hastings here is to make sure we have clean drinking water. And this is the most fundamental thing to life. I spoke with many constituents and residents here as I was out talking to the community, and in that process, the one thing that I heard over and over is they were extremely concerned about PFAS in the water. And I share that same concern. If we don't have clean water, then clearly we have misprioritized what we're doing. I want to thank Ryan and Dan, both Public Works and City Administrator, for their hard work over the years, and Mayor Mary for fighting for Hastings and clean water here, trying to access as many funds as possible, whether that was through grants or federal funding. They have never stopped, and for that we should be certainly thankful also. A couple items that I wanted to address is the multiple ways that we can get funding for Hastings. The first thing that I heard from constituents here in Hastings was, why aren't we included in the 3M settlement money? Why isn't Hastings included in dollars that the rest of the East Metro and other parts of the state have been included in if we have the same issue? We also have one well that's been specifically tied to 3M Chemolite through the TFSI PFAS chemical strain. This shows a direct connection, and this is why the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, Commissioner Kudelka, and the DNR distributed funds to Hastings, and rightfully so, for treatment and facilities to take care of that issue. The first thing that I did 2 days after I got elected was reached out to the legislative coordinator within my caucus and said, we need to make sure we get these bills written ASAP. I had the bills ready to go and dropped as quickly as humanly possible as soon as we started session. Everybody knows session had a rocky start this year, so all the bills got reset. However, I've stayed true to my word, and the first thing that I did for the city of Hastings, because it was the first thing that I heard from residents here, was to draft a bill that forced the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the DNR to distribute the settlement money from 3M that is specifically for this issue to Hastings so they can be included. Now, cities like Woodbury have gotten hundreds of millions of dollars from this settlement money, hundreds of millions, and Hastings has gotten almost nothing. Now, Woodbury has the advantage of being a very well-developed and large city, but Hastings is being left in the dark. So I'm fighting at the Capitol for Hastings on that front. Second to that, I immediately authored a bill for bonding also. I had asked Senator Seeberger to sign on to both the 3M funds, to the bonding, to the cash appropriations, and unfortunately, she stated that she didn't want to sign on to the 3M funding. She explicitly stated that in an email, and she does not want to support that effort, that being the number one concern of Hastings residents. 2, the Constitution, Article 4, Section 18 in Minnesota states that all spending bills need to originate in the House. And nonpartisan lawyers at the Capitol have stated that bonding agencies and bonding clearinghouses want to purchase bonds from clean bills. And it's been the tradition in Minnesota that all spending bills originate in the House. Unfortunately, Senator Seeberger said, if you don't sign on to my bill, which originated in the Senate, then I won't sign on to your bill, which originated in the House. And that's what went on for about a month. Now, I did receive an email just yesterday or 2 days ago stating that she would sign on to my bill. So since I was publicly attacked on that, I wanted to have an opportunity to be able to bring clarity to how that actually happened. I operated in good faith, didn't say anything publicly about talking through those issues, but she unfortunately took the low road and resorted to political attacks. Now, beyond that, I also authored a bill for cash appropriations. Minnesota had an $18 billion surplus 2 years ago and a year ago. They had raised spending by another $10 billion during the Democrat trifecta. So this is basically $25 billion was raised, but clean water wasn't prioritized. Now, if clean water isn't prioritized when you have $25 billion in spending, I think that your priorities are a little mixed up and a little bit off. Either that or you are just an ineffective legislator. If you have access to all those funds and you see all the fraud, waste, and abuse that occurred over multiple years, and yet we can't get money for a city that is struggling just to have clean drinking water, doesn't make any sense to me. Now, the fourth bill that I've been working really hard on behind the scenes, trying to figure out the constitutionality, because I believe in following the Constitution and the rule of law, is getting funding for Hastings through the Legacy Fund. Now, the Legacy Fund is a constitutionally mandated fund that is funded through sales tax in Minnesota. There's 3 parts of it, and one of the parts is the Clean Water Fund. The Clean Water Fund has over $100 million every year to be utilized, and it says at least 5% of that fund needs to be used for clean water, clean drinking water. Now, you can look at this 2 ways. You have clean drinking water on one half, and then you also have the responsibility of maintaining the resources around Hastings, not pumping PFAS polluted water out and letting it go into the river or surrounding lakes or surrounding streams and things of that nature. So my hope is that those that really believe that the environment is important and that it's critical that we protect our natural resources, that they will sign on to this bill also and fully back it. We're headed into a $5 billion budget deficit now. $5 billion budget deficit. After having a record amount of money over the last 2 years, we have been handed a really bad plate here to deal with. Now, we had the opportunity to fully fund this. The money is gone, unfortunately. So I have been left to try to clean up the mess and, again, be as creative as I possibly can to create funding sources for Hastings. We can't let water bills rise by hundreds of percentages here in Hastings when people are still struggling to pay their bills. So these are the 4 different bills that I've been working on. I have tried as hard as possible to be bipartisan, to work in a bipartisan manner, and to reach out across the aisle for the sake of Hastings. And this is where we're at now. And so I'd be happy to take any questions. And again, the Director of Public Works and the City Administrator are here. So they can also answer technical questions on any of these different items.
I have a question.
Sure.
Representative Dippel, this is, hi, let me see, what was this? 3 weeks, this is from Senator Seeberger. 3 weeks ago, I dropped my bill, this is from a post, I dropped my bill to help fund the water treatment project for City of Hastings government to remove PFAS from the city water supply. This is a top priority for me since we did not pass a bonding bill last session, and I have gotten a commitment from the Capital Investment Chair for an early bonding package. This is Senator Seeberger. Representative Dippel refuses to sign this bill. In fact, as of today, he has offered no bills in the House, bonding or otherwise. I've reached out to Representative Dippel countless times asking that we work together to help Hastings. He refuses to work with me on my bill, insisting that he be the one to draft any bill to fund this project. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking on an early bonding bill. This is not working together. I have assured Representative Dippel that I will sign on to any bonding bill he drafts to help Hastings. But as of today, I have seen nothing. Today, you see it on this. Personally, I think this is just like a big show while she's working on these things. We cannot do anything without each other. This, again, is Senator Seeberger. And I am calling on Representative Dippel to put partisanship and pride aside for the sake of Hastings. Representative, sign the House jackets for SF 550, and let's get Hastings the money it so desperately needs. And then this is my comment. I just think representatives and senators should do their jobs and just do the job that they're at and not be looking, I don't know, 2 years from now to be running for the Senate if that's what you're hoping to do. We have enough politicians federally and in our state that are always looking for the next best thing, and I think the best representatives and senators, politicians are the ones that do this for the good of the people, that have been asked to do really a selfless job and be hardworking. So that's my comment, but why didn't you sign on? I know you talked a lot about this, that, and the other thing. You know, it was an illegitimate thing what you guys did without a quorum, so nothing could be done. But the senator's been on this PFAS issue for a long time, and she's really smart. I just think you two could work really well together. So that's my comment.
Well, I really appreciate the comment. I didn't hear a question in there except maybe about the original bills and why am I not working together with Senator Seeberger, and my answer to that is within statements that I already made. I had asked Senator Seeberger 4 or 5 different times if she would sign on to the spending bill that constitutionally has to originate in the House, not in the Senate. So that is the rule of law. I believe that we are a nation of laws, that we should follow the Constitution, and that the Constitution is explicit that spending bills originate in the House. And nonpartisan House research, lawyers, stated that parties would be uncomfortable purchasing bonds from Minnesota if they didn't originate in the House. So again, Senator Seeberger originating the bill in the Senate would put in jeopardy institutions that would buy our debt. And so this whole thing could get passed through the whole entire process if it originated in the Senate, and then somebody could say, I'm not buying those bonds, it didn't originate in the House. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. So
You just have to join her, and then, I mean, the House and the Senate have to be involved in the bill. And then my last question, you're so for the rule of law, sir, but you had an illegitimate, for how many weeks? You guys illegitimately met, and in fact, well, I'm not even gonna get into it, but why would you meet when there's no quorum? It's a problem, sir. That's the rule of law. Your party has a problem with the rule of law, sir. I'm pleading and begging for your party to start to begin to be part of the rule of law, to care about cops that are injured on January 6th, to care enough about, anyway. I just don't understand. You guys always throw out the rule of law and you're pro-police, and then we see this. So you voted to disenfranchise the voters of Shakopee. That was a clear win by Representative Tabke. How can you vote to disenfranchise those people? That's a violation, in my opinion, of the rule of law. I'm just begging you. I mean, do you have any comments about those things?
again, I appreciate your comments on these
I'm
different...
asking a question. Well, how could you do that if you're for the rule of law?
I'm also for the First Amendment, but I don't think it's appropriate to interrupt when somebody's trying to give an answer either. So again, I appreciate your comments and the question, and this is why we have courts. They settle law, and when there wasn't a prior question, that is the process. It was respected, and we moved forward. That's my answer to your comment/question, but I realize you ran for House last time and lost
That has
against.
nothing to do with this, sir.
Well, again, I'm just making a statement. You have different motives in coming, obviously, than to get to the bottom of the PFAS issue. And I'd just like to keep it on topic because I care truly and deeply about Hastings and solving this very important issue for them. It's an emergency, and it's not time for partisan bickering about different
Sir,
things.
I just have to say this. PFAS has devastated 41A. That's the sister district north of us. We've been dealing with it for a long, long time. Now, you mentioned that I ran. I knocked on doors with people with cancer for generations, okay? It's a serious, serious issue. You can't take money away from the communities. It's spreading in my town of Afton, but it's been in West Lakeland for a long, long time. Lake Elmo, you keep talking about Woodbury because I know you want to divide, Woodbury and Hastings, right? I'm talking about everybody. All these communities need the help. So PFAS is important. I can't let you say that I'm not here for the PFAS issue. That is a critical issue, and that's really why I ran, since you brought it up. So don't accuse me of that. That's what I'm asking you to do. And I'm not going to sit here and take it anymore. This is your press conference, but don't say stuff like that. Don't lie about me anymore, all right? Your House Republican Campaign Caucus can't lie like they do. Just play the game fair.
Yeah,
Right.
we agree
Okay.
that PFAS is a very important
Thank
issue. I did not accuse you of anything otherwise other than deviating from the issue that we're here to address. I'm not going, yes. If anybody else has any other questions, yes.
I'm Lisa Liefeld. Tomorrow I'll have lived in Hastings for 57 years. It's my birthday tomorrow. I am also a city council member. So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly here is you want to change the terms of the original 3M settlement. So money that's been allocated to other communities, Afton, Woodbury, Cottage Grove, Newport, Gray Cloud, I think that's where you live, right? So are you looking at reallocating those funds that have already been decided on where they're going? Because as far as I'm concerned within the city, this is a new issue. PFAS is a bigger issue, but it's now an issue for us because of the EPA, right? They changed the numbers. We now have to do something about it. That to me makes it a new issue, which makes it new funding. I feel concerned that what I'm reading sounds like a little bit of a robbing from Peter to pay Paul. And being a good steward of my community, it's easy for somebody in the community to say, well, yeah, take money from Woodbury, take money from Afton. They have their problems too, right? So I guess what I want to know is to Senator Seeberger's bill that is looking for, this is new funding. I feel like I'm seeing reallocating of decisions that were already made. We weren't in the first 3M settlement because this in Hastings is now technically a new issue. Can you maybe fill me in a little bit on that? Am I incorrect in hearing that this, when we use the word reallocate, are we just robbing from one community to pay the other? I'll pause for you to respond.
No, I don't believe that's what we're doing. I believe there's adequate funding in the 3M settlement money to take care of Hastings as well. And if you look at the settlement, are you aware of priority 1 and priority 2 in the settlement?
Vaguely, thanks to my wonderful staff and administrator.
Yeah. And so you have to ask the question, should we be spending money on fishing piers when people are still struggling to get clean water? And I think the answer is an easy and obvious no. So under priority 2, there's $20 million designated to things of that nature. And it's obvious that the settlement, to your point, is strained for cash. And it's obvious there are communities in the area that need it. So to say that we should do these special pet projects when Hastings is struggling to get funding for a critical project, I think is a misallocation of funds and misprioritization.
Thank you for your response. However, don't feel like the answer I was looking for was in there. So Senator Seeberger's been working on this for 3 years. She's put time in, she's put a lot of effort, she's spent a lot of time in the community talking to people just as you have. Why exactly would you not support her bill for this?
As I mentioned...
And one follow-up before you respond to that. You've been working on this for how long?
I've been working on this since while I was campaigning.
While you were campaigning, okay. So go ahead and tell us why you wouldn't support her bill.
As I mentioned 2 different times, the Constitution says in Article 4, Section 18, that spending bills need to originate in the House. Her bill originated in the Senate, and the people that buy these hundreds of millions and billions of dollars worth of bonds want to make sure the law has been followed. So nonpartisan researchers at the Capitol said that these bills should not originate in the Senate because the people that buy the bonds, that get paid the interest after they buy the bonds, will not buy them because they're afraid there will be a lawsuit. So that hasn't happened because bonding bills originate in the House, and I did not want to jeopardize Hastings by having a bonding bill originate in the Senate.
So to the community who elected me, they know this is not my primary job, right? I am not a intellectual on the Constitution of the state of Minnesota. So for all I know, what you're saying to me is absolute crap. I have no idea why you wouldn't be able to support a bill, bring it back through the House. That to me blows my mind. You've been doing this for 2 weeks, and thank you. I do agree that this feels a bit like a charade, but I just have to say that for the city of Hastings, keep in mind where this money is going to come from. Being good stewards to communities near us, just be careful to what we're buying into. Absolutely, we want this paid. I would love for our taxes to not go up because of this. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to see it happening at somebody else's expense. When we know this is a bigger issue, and this is something that I feel very strongly about, that we need to seek new funding, which is what Judy Seeberger's bill allows for us. So thank you for your time. And have you presented those yet? Are they?
I dropped one of them again, so I've done that multiple times now. We've already addressed that issue. And these other ones, I was waiting patiently and trying to be as bipartisan as I could for Senator Seeberger to sign on to them. And she has refused to sign on to the 3M one. She has refused to sign on to the cash and bonding bills until I sign on to her bill that originated in the Senate unconstitutionally.
So you're going to suggest that a senator of her standing would draw up something that is unconstitutional, knowingly doing so? And I mean, you publicly stating that. So that's where I'm saying I don't know that this whole unconstitutional comment that you're making is accurate. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a senator. So thank you for your time. You'll pass this. Okay.
You had mentioned before announcing this bill that you had standardized and waited to do more research to see if it was constitutional, if it was legal, that kind of thing. Can you tell me about that research, about why this is, that let you announce it today?
I've actually talked about that in great detail with Senator Seeberger, and she unfortunately still was unwilling to sign on to my bill. So that is where it stands. I believe in following the rule of law and the Constitution, and within that, I didn't want to jeopardize funding for Hastings. I didn't want to see this bill get passed through the House, passed through the Senate, and make it through the governor and then challenged in courts. And this is why I've taken this path.
So just to be clear, the research you were doing for this was to make sure that bills should be originating in the House. Is that what you're saying?
No, to make sure, well, that is part of the research. However, I wanted to make sure that any bill that did get passed wouldn't somehow get tied up in the courts and leave Hastings high and dry.
Okay, so that had more to do with originating bills than working with the legacy fund?
Absolutely.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. However, I think I understand your question now more. You're specifically asking about the legacy fund.
Yeah, because you had, when we spoke previously, you had said that you were working on something out of the box, is how you characterized it, and that you needed to do more research to see if that would.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No,
That was
thank
my
you for, thank you for the clarification. So the legacy fund, as I mentioned, has 5% at least designated for clean drinking water under the water portion of it. Like I said, there's 3 different portions. And being on the legacy committee, I had a lot of information intake to try to understand what can we actually fund with this and how. So I didn't want to make a promise to Hastings and say, hey, I can get you the money through the legacy fund if I didn't think there was a constitutional path for it.
Right, and this might be a better question for Dan or Ryan, but did you speak with the city of Hastings about, if they had looked into it previously, or has that been considered by the city? Has that been looked into?
I'm happy to answer that too, so they don't have, unless you want to answer it, Dan.
The legacy bill specifically is not something that I recall that we looked at, but for the last 2 years, we certainly talked about needing to look under every stone, and this fits into that category. So it may be a less direct or less proven shot than the capital bonding, but we're certainly interested in any number of funding sources.
Sure, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, and I did inform them that I was looking at other avenues, but that I didn't want to make any promises until I knew that it was an appropriate pathway. I then informed them last week that I do believe that it is.
So I'm Maya Beck, and I represent Ward 2 of Hastings. And just like Lisa mentioned, the constituents that voted for me know this is not my full-time job, and I'm an auditor by trade, so I don't know too much that goes on in the House and the Senate. But one question I did have was, why are we prioritizing a legacy fund or a 3M settlement fund instead of like a general fund or a bonding bill?
That's a really good question. So I've been told that there were over $400 million worth of bonding requests within the first week of session at the beginning of session, okay? That doesn't even include where we're at now. There's a very high likelihood that there will only be about $800 million. That's a fraction of a fraction that's going to be available. And if you quantify that across all the members of the House, that looks like about $2 million per member. So that is a very small amount of money that's going to be available. Now, as I mentioned previously, we had an $18 billion surplus. We had raised spending another $10 billion on top of that. All of that money is gone now. We are projecting a $5 billion budget deficit now. The money has been spent. The money is gone. I am doing as much as I possibly can to secure these funds for Hastings and follow through on the promises that I made to these constituents.
Thank you. Lisa Liefeld, City Council again. You mentioned the money's gone. So back to the 3M settlement thing, and when I asked about robbing from Peter to pay Paul, so what's left in the 3M settlement? I guess I was under the understanding that the money's already been dished out, which is where we came in too late, right? So could you explain that a little bit to the people listening?
Yeah, that's not true. The money is not all gone. If you look at the spreadsheets that show exactly how many dollars are in the 3M settlement fund, there are hundreds of millions of dollars left. Now, you could say the money is gone because somebody on a spreadsheet elsewhere said that this is what we want to do with this money over 20 or 30 years for these particular areas. The problem is we have an issue right now. It's not 20 or 30 years out. So there is plenty of money to be able to fund the water filtration systems in Hastings through that fund.
And that's from the money that 3M has already set aside.
That's correct. There was $850 million settled. $760 million was available out of that settlement for this particular issue. $740 million was designated under priority number 1, which was clean water. Priority number 2 was another $20 million allocated for other projects if there were dollars left over. Now we know it's unlikely there will be dollars left over.
And my final question, just for transparency's sake, based on where you ran your election, 3M support your election at all?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
City Councilman, I just wanted to tell you that the funding goes to, we have a lot of private wells
Right.
in this, in the area. I think you guys might too.
Not as much as, not like
Like
you.
manager, I don't know. But you have, every year, those filters in every single household have to be put in, you know, replaced. And then that's also an environmental, there's environmental hazards to where that has to go.
Right.
It can be very costly, and there's promises, I think it's up to 20 years, that you have to keep doing that. And the wells, we had a well that should never have been impacted, that's impacted now in Afton. It's spreading. So that's why they say there's no more money left based on what's already, you know, what's already.
Thank you, Councilmember. That was my understanding, is the money has been earmarked
Yes, it's
for these projects going
for
forward.
us, so that we can
Right.
pay for these poor people that have already been impacted and are going to be
Exactly.
impacted in the future.
Perfect. Thank you. That was a
As,
clarification.
yeah, and as somebody who has a granulated activated charcoal filter in their basement and has for many years, I understand that need, but the point that priority number 2 was earmarked for other projects, and that is priority number 2, not priority number 1, and that money just had grants opened for it, very irresponsibly by Commissioner Kudelka, very irresponsibly, when Hastings needs that money. So I think drinking water is far more important than a fishing pier. And I hope everybody here agrees.
I have two issues, or two questions. One starts with you're talking about how a bill is made. Now, I'm not a scholar or a constitutional scholar, and I don't know, but I watch Schoolhouse Rock, which may sound funny, but that really does tell you how to make a bill. And bills can originate in either house, but there is a way that both of them need to be reconciled so that both chambers, whether it starts in the House or the Senate, otherwise you have the Senate sitting for 6 months waiting for the House to rule before they can do anything. And that makes absolutely no sense, and we know that's not how it works. So the bill, you work on similar bills, you come up with bills, it goes, if Senator Seeberger's bill comes over to the House and you have a similar bill, those two bills have to be reconciled before it can go to the governor to be signed, be accepted by both houses, and then go to be signed. So your somewhat false worry about a lawsuit that they're not going to buy our bond is a little hyperbole and a little hypocritical, because we have always had bills started. The Senate proposes bills, the House proposes bills. Then you get together and you decide on the language of the bill, and if it passes both houses, the House and the Senate, then it goes to the governor. I don't understand why you are so against even considering Senator Seeberger's bill. I think you're cutting off your nose to spite your face, because you're not, that's not reality. That's
So-
my first question, is on your thoughts of making bills.
Sure. Spending bills, that's the operative word. There are a multitude of bills, as you mentioned, that can originate in either the House or the Senate, either legislative body, but spending bills very specifically in Article 4, Section 18, have to originate in the House. And nonpartisan, not a Democrat, not a Republican, have stated That has been the tradition of the House since the inception of Minnesota, and that is what the bond clearing buyers want to see happen.
Can I follow up? Why couldn't you just work with her? And she wouldn't care if you said it's originated in the House, this will be Dippel's bill. Wouldn't you work with her on what she'd already done, that she's been working on for 3 years? You know she's really smart and she's been doing this. She passed a great piece of legislation banning PFAS. She's the expert. Just, it didn't matter. That's a real technicality that wouldn't have mattered to her, I'm sure. All I'm saying is why wouldn't you work and then say, yeah, okay, it has to originate with me. It'll have both of our names on it and it'll move through.
I did. And she refused to sign on to my bill unless I signed on to hers, which originated in the Senate and was unconstitutional.
That she's been working on for 3 years. Okay, sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
An unconstitutional bill is an unconstitutional bill. It's against the law, and it would be challenged in the courts, and I am not going to jeopardize Hastings for the sake of somebody's political opportunism and being unwilling to sign on to a bill that has to originate in the House. I gave her 4 opportunities to do so, and I gave her over a month to do so.
You are the junior representative, just so you know.
So being a senator for 3 years doesn't give you the right to break the Constitution.
No, but there's expertise and legislative smarts.
Article 4, Section 18.
I have one follow-up.
I'm going to have to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think we know how you folks feel. I can answer a couple questions.
Well, go ahead, ask. He'll stay for you, right, sir?
He hasn't asked a question yet, and I want to give him the respect to ask.
Because you keep going and going. I'm starting to wonder whose press conference is
Well,
this.
you weren't here, sir, so
I just
we
walked
asked
in.
questions. I know, so why?
All I've heard is you.
I know. We've been here since 10.
Good thing I was late. You noticed I was late, so.
Sir, this is.
Good.
Do you want to answer his questions, sir, or do you want to end it?
Tom, I guess I just have 2 questions if we get past this, folks. My question is, I'm not sure how we missed out on the first round of funding as the city of Hastings. And my next question is, in the funds available, what's our next steps that we have to do as the city?
Great objective questions. Unfortunately, the senator who tried to make this public and started political public attacks had over 2 years to work on this, as Lucia had alluded to, and she failed to secure the funds when we had billions and billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars. Okay, so I think that detracts from the argument that she is able to get it done and she has been working so hard. Beyond that, what do we need to do? I have 4 different bills that if Senator Seeberger wants to sign on at any given time, she is more than welcome. She has said she won't sign on to the 3M settlement bill. I don't know if she'll sign on to the legacy bill, and I'm still unsure if she's going to sign on to the cash bill, and she stated 2 days ago that she would come down and sign on to the bonding bill. Good. I am waiting for her to act. Now, I'm going to drop all these in the House. I was patiently waiting for her. She used that against me and said, I haven't worked on any bills, I haven't filed any bills. It's really sad and really unfortunate, and she has a lot of her people here to try to defend her.
That's not true, sir. We're here of our own volition.
Okay, yeah. You read her post verbatim. We're going to wrap this up, but I appreciate your question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of the very good questions. I'm sorry that this has turned into a partisan issue. I'm going to continue to work as hard as I can at the Capitol for Hastings.